Before cities and empires, we were wanderers on this pale blue dot. Our journey began in flickering firelight, painting stories on cave walls. As tools evolved from stone to bronze, so did we. Now, gaze upon the wonders of ancient civilizations. Pyramids, ziggurats, great walls. This is humanity's greatest journey, written in the stars and etched in stone. Imagine a moment in time, not a single year, not a single city, but a window of centuries when the human spirit cracked open and the great questions of life spilled out. What is the right way to live? What is justice? What is the soul? Between the 6th and 2nd centuries before the Common Era, these questions echoed across the ancient world, from the Yellow River to the Ganges, from the Mediterranean to the Zagros Mountains. And the answers changed the world. Historians call this the Axial Age, an era named not for its weapons or rulers, but for its ideas. It was as if humanity had reached a turning point, a kind of mental axis, pivoting from myth to morality, from ritual to reflection. For the first time in history, individual thinkers began asking not what the gods want from us, but what we owe to each other. In the ancient Chinese state of Lu, a scholar named Kongfuzi, whom we now know as Confucius, walked from court to court, preaching a doctrine not of divine right, but of human right conduct. He spoke of Ren, compassion, of Li, ritual, of Shao, filial devotion. His goal? Not revolution, but order. A world in which rulers led by example, and society held together by virtue, not violence. To put the world in order, he said, we must first cultivate our personal life. Not far away, in the Indian subcontinent, a young prince named Siddhartha Gautama turned his back on his palace. He walked among beggars and seekers, searching for an answer to the suffering he saw everywhere. And beneath the shade of a Bodhi tree, he found it. He became the Buddha, the enlightened one, and taught that life is suffering caused by desire. But liberation is possible through the middle way, neither indulgence nor denial. No gods, no castes, just a path toward inner peace, walked step by step. Meanwhile, in the bustling agora of Athens, another kind of sage was asking uncomfortable questions. What is justice? What is truth? How do you know what you think you know? His name was Socrates, a gadfly to the powerful, a lover of reason, a martyr for thought. He taught no dogma, he claimed no wisdom. He simply asked and demanded that others think. From his dialogues came the philosophical foundations of the West, carried on by Plato and Aristotle. And in the highlands of Persia, a prophet named Zarathustra, or Zoroaster, lit a fire that still burns today. He preached a cosmic dualism, a world divided between truth and lie, light and shadow, good and evil. His god, Ahura Mazda, was not one of many, but the one, and every human life, a moral battlefield. These sages never met. They never wrote to one another. They lived under different skies, spoke in different tongues, dreamed in different symbols, and yet the patterns are unmistakable. Each challenged the old order. Each placed ethics at the heart of existence. Each shifted the divine from the heavens to the human conscience. Confucius taught harmony in the family and state. The Buddha offered escape from suffering through self-awareness. Socrates sparked a revolution of critical reason. Zoroaster redefined morality as cosmic duty, and all of them, though divided by distance, spoke to the same awakening. Their voices still echo in our temples and universities, our laws and our values. They left no empires of brick and stone, but they laid the foundations for civilizations of the mind. In the span of a few centuries, Homo sapiens became something new, Homo ethicus, the ethical human. The world had turned and we would never think the same way again. This was the turning of the mind. This was the axial age, and it was only the beginning. In the fading light of China's spring and autumn period, the world seemed to unravel. Kingdoms rose and fell like leaves in the wind. Rulers waged war, not for justice, but for survival. But amid the chaos, one man looked not to the sword, but to the soul. His name was Kong-Fuzi, Master Kong. To the West, we know him as Confucius. Born in the 6th century before the Common Era, he lived not in golden palaces, but in an age of fragmentation and fear. And yet he dreamed, not of conquest, but of order. The Zhou dynasty, once the embodiment of heaven's mandate, was in decline, its king a mere figurehead, its land carved up by warlords. This was a world ruled by ambition. Confucius wanted a world ruled by virtue. He called for a return, not to superstition, but to righteousness. At the heart of his vision were 5 simple relationships: ruler and subject, father and son, husband and wife, elder and younger brother, friend and friend. If each person fulfilled their role with respect, humility and honor, the world, he believed, would find balance again. His teachings, recorded not by himself but by his followers, would become the Analects. And in its pages, a philosophy both revolutionary and deeply traditional. The superior man is modest in his speech, but exceeds in his actions. When we see men of virtue, we should think of equaling them. When we see men of a contrary character, we should turn inwards and examine ourselves. To govern is to set things right. If you begin by setting yourself right, who will dare not to be right? But Confucius was not content to teach. He travelled, seeking rulers wise enough to adopt his vision. Few listened, most laughed, yet he never abandoned hope. Because for Confucius, government was not about power, it was about moral example. He saw life as a series of relationships rooted in ritual, bound by duty, and above it all, the concept of heaven, not as a god, but as a moral order that sustained the cosmos. To rule well was not to command, but to align oneself with the mandate of heaven. Confucius placed great emphasis on ritual, not empty ceremony, but the sacred choreography of life. In bowing to one's ancestors, one acknowledged the past. In restraining one's speech, one honored social harmony. Rituals were reminders of where you stood and what you owed. In a world where strength was measured in blades and blood, Confucius offered something radical. The idea that character is mightier than the sword. That rulers must earn respect not through fear, but through virtue. He died with little fame. But 2 centuries later, under the Han Dynasty, his teachings became the bedrock of the Chinese state. Emperors would rule with Confucian legitimacy. Civil servants would be chosen not by lineage but by merit through grueling exams based on his thought. Today, his influence spans continents, from Korea to Vietnam, from Japan to Singapore. Even now, in a modern, often chaotic world, his values echo duty, decorum, education, harmony. He lived in a broken age, but believed in order. He walked among warlords, but spoke of peace. He never held office, yet helped shape empires. This was Confucius, not a prophet, not a god, but a teacher. And in his teachings he found a path, not to domination, but to dignity. In the heart of ancient India, where rivers meandered like veins through sacred soil, a young prince once looked beyond palace walls and saw suffering. It changed everything. He left his kingdom, his family, his comforts behind, not in search of conquest, but of truth, and beneath the shade of a tree, he would find it. His name was Siddhartha Gautama. Born into the royal family of the Shakya clan in the 6th century BCE, he was raised to rule, wrapped in luxury, shielded from the harshness of life. But when he stepped outside the palace gates, he encountered something that pierced the illusion. An old man, a sick man, a corpse, a wandering ascetic. In those moments he saw the universal condition: aging, illness, death, and the search for meaning. For years he wandered the forests and plains, studying with sages, starving his body in pursuit of spiritual liberation. He meditated until his ribs showed through his skin. He held his breath until he collapsed. He denied the world and found nothing. And then he stopped. In a moment of clarity he recalled a simple truth from childhood. When a string is too tight, it breaks. Too loose, it makes no sound. The truth lies in balance, neither indulgence nor extreme denial. He called it the middle path. He sat beneath a pipala tree, now known as the Bodhi tree, and vowed not to rise until he had found enlightenment. Days passed, temptations came, visions flickered, but he remained still, and then it happened. In the stillness of dawn, Siddhartha awoke, not just from sleep but from illusion. He saw reality as it truly was. He understood dukkha, suffering, as the universal thread, and he saw that suffering had a cause, craving, but more importantly it had a cure. He opens his eyes. He rose as the Buddha, the enlightened one, and what he taught would ripple across continents. His insight came to be known as the Four Noble Truths. Life is suffering, dukkha. Suffering is caused by craving. Craving can be overcome. There is a path to liberation, the Eightfold Path. The path he taught was not a command but an invitation, a way to live that embraced wisdom, ethical conduct and mental discipline. It required no gods, no sacrifices, no priesthood, just clarity, compassion, practice. His first sermon, delivered at Sarnath, set the wheel of Dharma in motion. He spoke of impermanence, of letting go, of finding peace not through possession, but through insight. The 5 who once scorned him became his first disciples. Within a few centuries, his teachings spread far beyond the Ganges. Carried by merchants, monks and missionaries, Buddhism crossed mountains and deserts, evolving as it moved. In Sri Lanka, it found serenity. In China, it met Confucianism and Taoism. In Japan, it became Zen, a religion without borders, a truth beyond language. The great Indian emperor Ashoka, once a conqueror, embraced the Buddha's message after witnessing the horrors of war. He spread the Dharma not by force, but by example. His pillars of stone still stand today, bearing witness to a spiritual revolution. Today, over 500 million people identify as Buddhist, but the Buddha's message was never about identity. It was about liberation, from suffering, from ego, from illusion. His voice, though ancient, speaks clearly in our noisy age. He sought no throne, he built no empire, he left no heirs, and yet he became one of the most transformative figures in human history. Beneath a tree, a prince became a seeker became a teacher, and a teacher awakened the world. In the golden light of a Mediterranean dawn, a new kind of city was stirring, a place not just of trade and temples, but of talk, a city alive with questions, and in its heart, one man who refused to stop asking them. His name was Socrates, a stonecutter's son, a veteran soldier, a thorn in the side of conventional wisdom. He left no writings, no school, no dogma. What he left were questions, and the ripples they caused shaped the very foundations of Western philosophy. What is justice? What is courage? What is a good life? Socrates claimed to know nothing, but in knowing nothing, he revealed how little everyone else knew. His method was simple: ask, probe, challenge. This was Elenchus, the dialectic, a conversational dance designed to unmask assumptions and expose contradictions. He questioned poets, he questioned generals, he questioned priests, he questioned democracy itself. In a city that prided itself on free speech, Socrates paid the ultimate price for using it. In 399 BCE, accused of corrupting the youth in impiety toward the gods, Socrates was sentenced to death. He refused to flee. The unexamined life, he said, is not worth living. And with a cup of hemlock, he made his final argument with his life. But his legacy did not die. One of his students, Plato, carried the flame forward. In him, Socratic doubt met poetic vision. In his famous allegory of the cave, Plato imagined mankind as prisoners mistaking shadows for truth. Real knowledge, he believed, lay beyond appearances, in the realm of forms, perfect, unchanging ideals that underpinned the flawed world we see. Justice, beauty, goodness. These were not opinions, but eternal truths waiting to be known. Plato founded the Academy, the first great institution of higher learning in the Western world. Here he taught that society should be ruled not by the rich or the strong, but by philosopher kings, those who loved wisdom above wealth. A radical idea then, a radical idea still. One of Plato's brightest students would take a different path, Aristotle. Where Plato gazed at the heavens, Aristotle looked at the earth. He studied biology, logic, rhetoric, ethics, politics. To him, philosophy was not about escaping reality, but understanding it piece by piece. He systematized thought itself, pioneering formal logic. He dissected not just plants and animals, but politics and poetry, and in doing so laid the intellectual groundwork for science, reason, and empiricism. Centuries later, his writings would pass through the Arab world, be rediscovered by Christian Europe, and echo in the work of Galileo, Newton, and Darwin, from Athens to the world. Socrates taught us to question. Plato taught us to imagine. Aristotle taught us to analyze. Together they created not an empire of stone, but a republic of the mind. Even now, when we ask why, when we seek truth through reason, when we dream of a just society, we walk in their shadow. In the bright marble of Athens they asked timeless questions, and 25 centuries later, we are still answering. Long before Rome, before Islam, before the Bible was written, there was a man who claimed to have seen the world with new eyes, not in a temple, not in a city, but on an empty plain. His name was Zarathustra, or, as the Greeks would later call him, Zoroaster. He was born in a time we can barely touch, sometime between 1800 and 1000 BCE in what is now eastern Iran or Central Asia. A time of tribal gods and blood sacrifices, of fire worship and animal rites, but Zoroaster brought a different vision. According to tradition, at the age of 30, he received a revelation from a divine being named Vohumana, good mind. And through this vision, Zoroaster came to know the wise Lord Ahura Mazda. Zoroaster's world was stark and astonishingly modern. He taught that the universe was a battleground between two opposing forces, Asher, truth, order, light, drudge, lie, chaos, darkness, and every human being stood between them, not as a pawn, but as a participant. In Zoroaster's view, good and evil were not imposed from above. They were chosen by us. Humans were free, and with freedom came responsibility, to choose truth, to reject the lie, to align with Asher. Fire, for Zoroastrians, was not a god. It was a symbol of clarity, purity, and divine presence. It flickered in every temple, every home, every soul that sought righteousness. And it burned with one message: light the truth in yourself. Zoroaster's message might have faded into obscurity, but then came an empire. The Achaemenids, Cyrus the Great, Darius, Xerxes, rulers of the largest empire the world had yet known. They embraced Zoroastrian principles, not as dogma, but as ethical foundations. In their royal proclamations, the kings declared allegiance to Ahura Mazda. They presented themselves not as divine, but as servants of divine order. Their power rested not in cruelty, but in cosmic justice. The Persian Empire was a marvel of its time, a road system that spanned 3,000 kilometers, a policy of religious tolerance, multilingual administration, beneath it all, a unifying idea, that to rule wisely was to uphold Asher. When Persia clashed with Greece, it wasn't just a war of spears. It was a war of ideas. The West remembers Marathon and Thermopylae, but rarely do we ask, what belief system animated those Persian armies? Zoroaster's legacy flowed quietly into the future, into Judaism, through Persian exile and return, into Christianity, with angels, devils, a final judgment, into Islam, with the eternal struggle between light and ignorance. Some scholars even trace his echoes in the very concept of Satan. Today, Zoroastrians are few, perhaps under 200,000 worldwide, but their flame still burns on altars in Mumbai and Yazd, in prayers recited in Avestan, in the rhythm of Nowruz, the Persian New Year, a whisper of an ancient vision that in a dark world the greatest power is the choice to be good. Zoroaster spoke not of miracles but of morals, not of blind obedience but of mindful action. His was a religion of ethical clarity, where the soul is a battlefield and the sword is truth. And in the firelight of his vision, humanity took a step closer to understanding its own reflection. In the wind-swept heart of ancient Persia, a tomb stands alone, modest, silent, stone laid without boast. Inside lies a man who conquered more land than anyone before him, not with terror, but with tolerance. His name was Cyrus the Great, and his dream was unlike any the ancient world had known, a world not divided but united. In the 6th century BCE, a tribal prince rose to power in the rugged land of Anshan. He defeated the Medes not by slaughter, but by absorbing their power, their language, their culture. This was Cyrus's genius, to conquer not by destroying identity, but by embracing it. He swept through the ancient world, defeating Croesus of Lydia, marching into Mesopotamia, extending his reach from the Aegean Sea to the Indus Valley. But wherever he went, he brought not ruin, but reform. When he entered Babylon, the greatest city of its age, there was no siege, no looting, no vengeance. Instead, he issued a declaration etched in clay, now known as the Cyrus Cylinder. It proclaimed freedom of worship, the repatriation of exiled peoples, the rebuilding of sacred shrines, among them the Jewish temple in Jerusalem. So extraordinary was his mercy that in the Hebrew scriptures Cyrus is called Mashiach, anointed by God, a foreign king hailed as a saviour. Cyrus laid the foundation for what would become the Achaemenid Empire, the largest the world had ever seen. Stretching across 3 continents, it was a tapestry of cultures, languages and beliefs, and yet it functioned as one. How? Cyrus implemented a model of imperial administration still studied today, local autonomy under satraps, a shared bureaucracy, a common currency, and a postal system that could deliver messages over 2,000 kilometers, faster than most medieval kingdoms. The royal road stretched from Susa to Sardis, 2,700 kilometers. A message that once took weeks could now arrive in days. The empire did not just conquer space, it conquered time. At Persepolis, imperial art told the story, not of domination, but of diversity. Delegates from Egypt, Bactria, Lydia and Elam walked side by side, not in chains but with offerings. No faces bowed, no culture erased. This was Cyrus's philosophy. That unity need not mean uniformity. Today the Cyrus Cylinder is sometimes called the world's first charter of human rights. Though modern historians debate the label, its message still inspires. In 21st century institutions, in declarations of dignity and pluralism, the echo of Persia remains. Cyrus died as he lived, without grandeur but with purpose. No monument of gold, no boastful inscription, just a simple stone, and a vision that still stirs the soul. That an empire can be strong without being cruel, that power can serve peace. In an age of conquest, he imagined cooperation. In a world of tribal gods, he saw the dignity of all faiths. He ruled not as a tyrant, but as a guardian. This was Cyrus the Great, and in his dream of one world, he gave birth to an idea that would shape all others. 2,500 years ago, in a small rocky city by the Aegean Sea, an idea emerged, so bold, so radical, that it would echo through the ages. It was not an empire, not a religion. It was the belief that ordinary people could rule themselves. This was Athens, and this was democracy. In most ancient societies, power flowed downward, from gods to kings, from kings to subjects. But in Athens it flowed upward, from farmers, merchants, artisans, male citizens who, by casting a vote or raising a hand, shaped the fate of their city. Athenian democracy was not perfect, but it was astonishing. The assembly met 40 times a year. Every citizen could speak. The Council of 500 was chosen by lot, not wealth. Even judges were ordinary men, picked by lottery each day. It was ruled by the many, not the few. Under Pericles, Athens reached its height, politically, artistically, and intellectually. Our constitution, he said, is called a democracy because power is in the hands not of a few, but of the many. It was a system that demanded participation and rewarded eloquence. In Athenian courts, every man was his own lawyer. Persuasion wasn't just a skill, it was survival. The art of rhetoric became a way of life, and nowhere was this more celebrated than on the stage. Every year, thousands gathered at the foot of the Acropolis, not for politics but for drama. Tragedy and comedy weren't mere entertainment. They were civic rituals, mirrors of the soul and critiques of the city. In Aeschylus, justice wrestles with revenge. In Sophocles, kings fall to their own blindness. In Euripides, women rage, gods deceive, and truth cuts deep. These plays asked what law could not, what makes a life meaningful, what makes a society just. And then came comedy, sharp, irreverent, and merciless. Aristophanes mocked everything from warmongers to philosophers, exposing the follies of the age with biting wit. In Athens, even the gods weren't safe from satire. And yet, it was far from universal. Women could not vote. Slaves and metics, resident foreigners, were denied rights. At its height, only about 40,000 of Athens' 300,000 residents had full citizenship. Democracy, it turned out, had its boundaries. Athens' experiment with democracy would not last forever. War with Sparta, long, brutal and humiliating, shattered its confidence. Fear and demagoguery crept in. Socrates, who once questioned everything, became a scapegoat. In 399 BCE, the city that gave birth to free thought silenced its greatest thinker with poison. But ideas are not easily buried. The Athenian model would be studied, copied, reimagined, from Roman republics to modern democracies. The principle that power belongs to the people would outlive the city that first dared to proclaim it. In marble and mask, in speech and silence, Athens gave us a gift, a vision, not just of government but of citizenship. That freedom is not given, it is practiced. And in every voice raised, every truth spoken, every vote cast, the people of Athens still speak. In marble and mask, in speech and silence, Athens gave us a gift, a vision, not just of government but of citizenship. That freedom is not given, it is practiced. And in every voice raised, every truth spoken, every vote cast, the people of Athens still speak. All roads may have led to Rome, but Rome itself began not in marble nor in empire, but in a marshy cluster of hills, and an idea that the people, not kings, should govern, an idea called the res publica, the Republic. The Roman Republic was a machine of balance. 2 consuls held executive power, but for only 1 year. The Senate advised with age and experience. The assemblies gave voice to the citizens, at least those who were male, free and Roman. It was a delicate dance of rivalry, alliance and ambition. Romans prided themselves on libertas, liberty, and mos maiorum, the customs of their ancestors. But this freedom was fragile. And the Republic was built not to last, but to adapt. As Rome's borders grew, so too did its burdens. Victories brought glory and greed. Provinces meant wealth, armies meant loyalty, and soon powerful generals began commanding more than just troops. They commanded allegiance. And then came Julius Caesar, bold, brilliant, and utterly unstoppable. He crossed the Rubicon with his army, defying the Senate, defying tradition. He was hailed as dictator for life. And then, on the Ides of March, assassinated by those who feared he was becoming a king. But the dagger that ended Caesar did not save the Republic. Civil war followed. Brother turned on brother, and from the ashes rose Octavian, Caesar's heir, who would become Augustus. Rome had lost its republic, but it gained something new, an empire. Augustus ruled not as a tyrant, but as the first citizen, princeps. He cloaked power in tradition, kept the Senate, but neutered it, maintained the Republic's rituals while holding absolute control. Under Augustus and his successors, Rome entered its greatest era, the Pax Romana, Roman peace. Roads spanned continents, Latin echoed in Britain, Greek in Egypt, Roman law, Roman coin, Roman gods, woven into daily life from Hispania to Judea. For 200 years, the empire held. Rome did not just conquer with legions, it conquered with infrastructure. With cities, with sanitation, with spectacle. Its arenas thrilled the masses. Its aqueducts brought water to millions. Its road still shaped the map of Europe. The empire was not just Roman. It was a mosaic. Citizens were not defined by ethnicity, but by allegiance. By the 2nd century CE, even emperors would hail from the provinces. At its philosophical height, the empire bred thinkers like Marcus Aurelius, soldier, emperor, stoic, a man who led armies while quietly asking, "What is virtue?" And yet, even as it grew, the seeds of Rome's decline were being sown. Power bred decadence, borders stretched thin, the unity of the Republic had become the burden of empire. Rome began as a republic of farmers. It became a city of soldiers, a capital of emperors, a symbol of civilization itself. Its republic died, but its rule endured. For centuries, to be Roman was to belong to the world, and long after the legions disappeared, the idea of Rome would live on. Two great rivers, two ancient lands. In India and China, power once flowed like water, shaping kings, carving cities and birthing ideas that would outlive empires. The Mauryan Empire rose in the 4th century BCE, India's first great imperial unifier. Its founder? Chandragupta Maurya, a man of humble origins, who, with the guidance of a political mastermind named Chanakya, overthrew corrupt rulers and forged an empire stretching from the Himalayas to the Deccan Plateau. But it was Chandragupta's grandson, Ashoka the Great, who would transform the Maurya legacy. After a bloody victory at Kalinga, Ashoka stood amidst corpses and conquest and felt only grief. While the Maurya rose in India, a new power stirred in the east. After the brief but brutal reign of the Qin, the Han dynasty emerged in 206 BCE, founded by Liu Bang, a former peasant turned emperor. What followed was one of the most enduring golden ages in Chinese history. The Han perfected the art of bureaucracy. Under Emperor Wu, Confucianism became state doctrine. With Confucian ideals and legalist efficiency, the Han built roads, canals and granaries. They taxed fairly, punished harshly and watched carefully. Han China was a civilization of thinkers and tinkerers. They charted the stars, invented the seismograph and began making paper, a revolution in knowledge storage. And yet the Han never lost sight of the land. The peasant, in Confucian thought, was the backbone of the empire. Their labour fed cities, their taxes funded armies, and their values, filial piety, loyalty, humility, were woven into the imperial soul. The Maurya and the Han. Two empires thousands of miles apart, both defined by their dual mastery of power and principle. They ruled not just with armies, but with ideas. Law, morality, bureaucracy, belief, woven into the machinery of empire. Long after their borders crumbled, their legacy endured, in language, religion, governance and culture. They were empires of thought, forged in steel. As empires rose and fell, as roads linked continents and philosophers shaped minds, something more intimate and more enduring was taking root. Not in marble courts or battlefield camps, but in hearts, rituals and stories. This was the age when belief became religion, when the search for meaning took form and became faith. Part 1. The Evolution of Hindu Thought. In India, the oldest layers of religious tradition trace back to the Vedas, hymns and chants passed down by memory long before they were ever written. These early texts offered ritual, sacrifice and cosmic order. But by the first millennium BCE, a profound shift was underway. In the Upanishads, sages questioned the meaning of sacrifice and turned inward. What is the soul? What is the ultimate reality? Their answer, Atman, is Brahman. The self is not separate from the cosmos, it is the cosmos. From this emerged the core concepts of karma, samsara and moksha, a cycle of rebirth driven by action and the hope of liberation beyond it. This evolving tradition, later known as Hinduism, offered not one path but many. Devotion, bhakti, knowledge, jnana, action, karma. Gods became personal. Dharma became daily. It was not just a belief system, it was a way of being. Title Part 2. The Rise and Reach of Buddhism. On-screen text. From within the Hindu tradition came another path, Buddhism. We've already met Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, but now his message was going global. From India, Buddhism travelled east, carried by monks and merchants, supported by kings, translated and transformed by each culture it touched. In Gandhara it met Greek art. In China it absorbed Taoist and Confucian ideas. In Japan it became Zen, a religion without a creator god focused not on worship, but on awakening. Title, Part 3, The Covenant and the Community Judaism, on-screen text. In the hills of Canaan, another tradition was taking shape, Judaism. At its heart, a covenant, a sacred agreement between a single people and a single God. Not many gods, not impersonal forces, but one God, Yahweh, who was just, jealous, and deeply involved in human history. The Hebrew Bible told the story of creation, exile, deliverance and law, of prophets who spoke truth to power, of kings and empires, and of survival through displacement. When the Babylonians destroyed the temple in Jerusalem, the Jewish people faced an existential crisis, but they did not vanish. Instead, they adapted, carrying their faith into exile. And when Cyrus the Great allowed their return, they rebuilt not just a temple, but a resilient text-based religion that could survive without a state. Part 4. Zoroastrianism's moral flame. In Persia, the religion of Zoroaster continued to burn brightly. Its core teaching that each soul must choose between truth and the lie deeply influenced later religious thought. Final judgment, resurrection, heaven and hell all appeared here centuries before they would take root in Abrahamic traditions. Though now a minority, Zoroastrians remain, and in their prayers a whisper of ancient dualism persists that to live well is to choose well. Part 5. Faith across borders. Religion did not remain locked within borders, it travelled. Along the Silk Road, the Indian Ocean, the deserts of Arabia, faith became one of humanity's earliest exports. Not just beliefs, but art, architecture, ritual and language. While each tradition had its roots, they also evolved. They splintered into schools, they debated doctrine, they absorbed the local. And yet, across these religions ran shared threads: compassion, discipline, community, transcendence, and the profound belief that life, however difficult, had meaning. These ancient faiths endure, not because they stayed the same, but because they adapted across time, culture, and continent. They survived empire, exile, and skepticism, and today they continue to shape how billions live, love, mourn, and hope. They survived empire, exile, and skepticism, and today they continue to shape how billions live, love, mourn, and hope. The empires may be gone, the sages long silent, but the questions they asked, the paths they laid, still guide us. In temples and homes, in silence and song, these are the faiths that endured. The empires may be gone, the sages long silent, but the questions they asked, the paths they laid, still guide us. In temples and homes, in silence and song, these are the faiths that endured. Long before the internet, long before trains, printing presses or airplanes, the world was already connected. By footpaths and wagon trails, by riverboats and sea winds, goods moved, people moved, and with them, ideas. The Silk Road was not a single road, but a sprawling web. It stretched over 4,000 miles from the heart of China to the edges of the Roman Empire. Along it travelled silk, yes, but also jade, spices, glass, gold, and belief. In oasis towns like Samarkand and Merv, languages mingled. Chinese merchants bargained with Persians. Indian monks debated with Greek philosophers. Ideas moved as freely as silk. Philosophies, technologies, even religions. Buddhism flowed from India into China. Glassware from Rome reached the Yellow River. From these exchanges grew not just commerce, but civilization. Centuries before Rome paved its first mile, the Persian Empire had already built the Royal Road. From Susa to Sardis, it spanned nearly 2,700 kilometres. A message that once took months could now be delivered in days. The Romans took the idea further. All roads lead to Rome wasn't metaphor, it was infrastructure. Over 80,000 kilometres of paved stone roads connected legions to frontiers and farmers to markets. Roads meant not just movement, but control. Empires taxed what moved along them. They enforced security, but they also couldn't prevent what travelled invisibly: rumour, faith, resistance. Enter the coin. Invented in Lydia, the coin soon spread across the Mediterranean, the Near East and Asia. Coins didn't just simplify exchange, they projected power. A face on a coin was more than a ruler. It was a promise. This metal holds value everywhere in this empire. The Mauryas issued punch-marked coins stamped by the state. The Han standardized round coins with square holes, practical, stackable, portable. Rome minted denarii that crossed continents in soldiers' pay and merchants' tills, and where coins could not go, credit did. From clay tablets in Sumer to promissory notes in ancient India, the ancient economy was more sophisticated than we often imagine. But the most powerful exports of the ancient world were not silk or gold. They were ideas. Buddhism crossed mountains, Confucian texts crossed dynasties, Greek philosophy seeped into Persian courts and Islamic libraries. In cities like Alexandria, scrolls came from every corner of the known world. Mathematics from Babylon, astronomy from India, medicine from Egypt. Cultures did not merely collide, they combined. Even writing systems were contagious. The Phoenician alphabet travelled west to become Greek and Latin, and east to influence Aramaic, which shaped scripts from Hebrew to Arabic. In these ancient crossroads, one could see the world in miniature, multilingual, multi-faith, multicultural. A merchant might speak 4 languages before noon. A temple might host gods from opposite ends of the continent. Today we move at the speed of light, but our need to connect, to exchange, to understand is nothing new. 2,000 years ago, the world was already building a web, not digital, but human. These were the first networks of stone and story, of silver and spirit. Roads carried armies, coins carried value, but ideas carried us forward.